Hello, everyone, and welcome. So I'm Serena. I'm the president of UCL FinTech Society, and I'm very, very excited to introduce an exciting guest who we have today to run a session that hopefully a lot of people will be able to learn a lot from. So today I'll be introducing Milad Shojaei, who is a trainee legal advisor at the Ministry of Justice UK, as well as a strategy and engagement director at Casedo, which is a really exciting company whose software is very cool and who he can probably explain better than I can. So I will just let him take it away. And then if anyone has anything to ask, obviously, if you're watching it live, feel free to directly comment it in Facebook or on YouTube. And if you have any questions after the fact, once again, do feel free to comment them. And then we'll make sure that the questions get to Milad and Casedo, and they can answer you with however they need to. So Milad, welcome. How are you doing?
Hi, Serena. Thank you for that. And I'm doing really well. I'm grateful to be on this. I understand that a lot of the viewers who watch live and a lot of people get to watch the recording later. So I'm grateful to anyone who's watching now and anyone who watches later on. It's really good to see people sharing the same enthusiasm as we have on the topic of tech, a really exciting topic that's probably relevant now more than ever.
Mm-hmm. We're really, really excited to have you. So I know that you have a lot planned to talk about. So maybe we'll just let you take it away with some advice for people on how to write some really fantastic academic writing. So I'll just let you take it away.
Thank you. So as Serena says, I'm currently a legal advisor at the Ministry of Justice doing my training, and I really got my introduction to legal tech back when I had the privilege of joining the Casedo team. And this was during my study, so I was a student at the time. And upon entering, I obviously immediately had to find out what Casedo was about, and found it was a really good intuitive software that helps lawyers in a variety of ways, and it had some wider applications that I was able to take advantage of as a student. And from that, I sort of emerged and got involved with the tech community and all of the relevant, exciting initiatives that are out there. Since then, I've had the opportunity to use legal tech, specifically Casedo, alongside other tools for a lot of different projects, namely research-heavy projects where you would normally bring in countless documents, PDFs, and journals, commentaries into one space, and you're wanting to use them to sort of get an angle and advocate a particular argument. Originally, the first time I had the opportunity to use legal tech in this capacity was actually as a student, when I was exploring different strategies in writing and using technology to assist in reducing the amount of time it takes to do the research stage, and also in terms of navigating through the research I've collated and getting the ultimate result. So the main topic we're going to be going into today is alongside different strategies and techniques you can use as a student and beyond, as well as the tools that are out there that you should really be getting to grips with and using widely as well. So the first thing in this presentation, and perhaps you'll be considering in the actual section of your work where you're beginning and starting to find out what it is it takes to write a good piece in terms of dissertations or masters or publications or whatever the case may be, anything where you're bringing in research, what you first want to do is conduct that research effectively. And one of the key things I find, and one of the key pieces of advice I got from my course supervisor during the masters, a lot of this presentation will be concerning my masters I did alongside my BPTC. It was a 10,000 word piece on ultimately bridging the gaps to justice in an age of austerity, bringing in several different themes about vulnerable people and how they can sort of have better access to justice. During that time, my course supervisor gave me a really good piece of advice that resonated with me then, and it should do with you now and beyond. And it's about quality and not quantity. And what I mean by this is, the last thing you really want to do is spend hours investigating research and journals and commentary that seems to be relevant towards the topic that you're advocating, towards that concept, only to later find that it's not relevant at all. So what I would advise is really putting in the time to getting and isolating specific pieces that really relate towards the concept you're driving forward. And knowing your topic is also very important. When I did my master's, I actually dedicated about 2 months just on figuring out what it is I wanted to write about. And this essentially means getting a flavor of what it is you're going into and what you're immersing yourself in and what the reader is immersing themselves in. And depending on the project and how lengthy the project is, I'd always advise really spending a sufficient amount of time actually understanding what it is you're writing about. At the end of the day, if the ultimate text doesn't resonate with you, it most likely won't resonate with the reader. So it's important to realize that researching is a process, and you shouldn't be afraid to change your mind at any given time. Understand your topic, and throughout the research process, be willing to change and feel that the topic can be versatile. In that, with my master's, the angle I took originally was exploring the disadvantages experienced by the vulnerable. Only later did I actually add assisting their access to justice. And the way I did this is the researching stage was continual. I was, throughout my time, the master's was a 12 months project, and throughout it, I was continually doing research on the same broader topic and finding out newer and newer information that was relevant towards the subject matter. And later on, I started realizing that it's not necessarily just the gaps in justice that vulnerable people have, but the methods by which they can bypass this through legal aid agencies and law clinics. And this is something I realized later on, but I wasn't afraid to revitalize and reconstruct the topic I was advocating and discussing later on. So it's always important to realize that you shouldn't feel the need to get all of the research done initially and then move on to the drafting stage, but rather be very proactive about your research, continually investigate more and more on the subject matter. And this will also help keep you up to date with what it is you are discussing and advocating. It may necessarily, if for example, if you're necessarily going into a specific relevant topic, it may be artificial intelligence, blockchain, or something that's really hot at the time. If you're continually doing research in that topic, you'll find newer and newer things. And as a result, your work will always be up to date with the wider theme. Another really important thing about the research stage is doing a preliminary search of information, investigating exactly what it is you're discussing. So rather than diving right into the topic you've got at the forefront of your mind, think about and investigate that topic largely, because it may at times be the case that there isn't actually enough information on a specific thing that you've got in mind, and you'll later realize that you have to change the topic suddenly and needlessly. So always look into the topic, investigate it, and sort of investigate the broader issues and implications that it has. For me, when I was doing my master's, I was volunteering with a law clinic, and I could firsthand see all of the different issues that the vulnerable and the disadvantaged in society were facing in light of different political crises, in light of cuts in legal aid, and a variety of other things. So I had the prior knowledge and the understanding, but I still investigated them further and more widely. Through doing this, I realized that there was a select amount of specific topics that related to the subject matter, but there were only 2 that were worth my time. And through that, I was able to really put my time in effectively and not waste a second, really getting to grips with the information that was going to be necessary and relevant throughout my master's. So with that said, what's also very important is to always have your research question in mind. When you're working through your master's and the research, here you can see my 10,000 word thesis that I did during my LLM and BPTC. Throughout it, what I always had in mind was a reflection on my experience as a volunteer at Toynbee Hall. And the question in mind was the impact on the vulnerable and disadvantaged in our communities, and then in respect of my experiences dealing with them. So when you're doing your research, whether it's on the cuts on legal aid or whether it's on the uncertainty following the United Kingdom's departure of the EU, ultimately Brexit, specifically always look into that question, because you could get sidetracked and start going into really unfamiliar territory, which would resonate and reflect on your masters, on your larger work, and it won't be as coherent as you want it to be, or you plan it out to be. So with that said, keep the research question in mind, and then deal with it one piece at a time, getting a flavor and sense of all the topics, and then you can connect them later. This was relevant, particularly for me, because I was dealing with two separate themes within one project that dealt with a larger theme. Now, obviously, there's some dissertations and masters and research projects that have a concurrent theme going throughout, and therefore you're only dealing with one theme at a time anyways. But a lot of them, like mine, you're dealing with several different things. And I would really, really implore that you separate them into manageable sections and you investigate them individually. Later on, they will connect. I wouldn't be too concerned about two separate topics that may seem far-fetched to each other to connect. For instance, with Brexit, I was able to connect it with the cuts on legal aid, because the cuts on legal aid was relevant to cuts in the immigration sector, and the immigration sector later on related to EU and Brexit. So by dealing with them separately, later on, when I started investigating and deliberating on them and start writing them, they start connecting. But it still is advisable to separate them to manageable sections rather than have the nervous feeling and reality that you have to do all of it at the same time. And this will ultimately also allow you to work at a steady pace, where at the end of it, you've dealt with a more separated section of work, and you can deal with each issue individually, especially if you're relaying any of your concerns and your work with a course supervisor like I did, or maybe the academic skills unit at your university, or wherever the case may be. And what's also very important in the next section of this presentation is using the right tools. This is probably the most focused point of this webinar, simply because it was the most important decision I made when I was writing, not only when I did my first piece as a dissertation, a pro bono module dissertation that I did at undergraduate, and later on at master's, but even right now, when I'm writing publications and articles, a really key thing is to understand the resources that are out there and get to grips with them early and understand how to use them. A lot of people rely on conventional tools like printing paper-based documents and bring them together, and that may be well and it may work, but we've entered a new age where technology has really dominated the field, and you can take advantage and leverage the advantages that are available so that you can work more efficiently. And if you are able to leverage advantages that cuts the amount of time you spend on researching or deliberating and investigating, this will then you can then utilize this time on the drafting section, which will allow you to get work done early and more proficiently. So what I specifically use and what I relied on was two tools. One was Westlaw, as you can see in front of me, and the other one was Casedo. Now, there are a variety of other sources out there, for instance, Google Scholar or LexisNexis. You can even use Lawtel, but I personally preferred keeping it as simple as possible and having one or two digital platforms I was going to navigate through, so it would simplify the researching procedure, it would simplify everything. I think the human brain works in a way where you want to do the least amount of work possible, so if you can, then do. I used Westlaw and Casedo, and the two really supplemented each other, and I've been using them ever since. I still use them as a legal professional. I still use it as a student that's just simply writing on academic things I enjoy. And the way I use it is fairly simple. I'm going to show it in a demonstration regarding my master's and the specific topic I had in mind, which was bridging the gaps to justice in an age of austerity. But obviously, you can use it interchangeably in whatever project or whatever assessment you have. So for instance, LASPO, which is the Legal Aid Sentencing Procedure Act, this related to the cuts on legal aid and housing and different sorts of legal procedures that people who couldn't afford had access to. Now, the topic I was investigating is the impact on those people and how those people could turn to law clinic and legal aid agencies to fill those gaps that were cut by cuts in legal aid. Now, within Westlaw, I'd simply go on the specific topics, narrow it down. What I had in mind was equality and human rights and health and social welfare more than anything else. So I'd search for within that, as you would. A lot of people would be familiar with Westlaw simply because it's connected with all universities. It's a very integral function that a lot of people use, both inside and outside of university. I would scroll through and I would collate different cases. Here in front of me, I've got cases, but you could use journals, commentary, all sorts of things. Now, within the cases I'd investigate, I'd find something that would be relevant. Within these, something that is relevant would be, let's see, on application by 2 asylum seekers for costs and circumstances, the Secretary of State had withdrawn her certification of human rights claims. So this is about immigration and the cuts on legal aid in immigration matters. That sounds quite important. So ZF, Afghanistan v. Secretary of State for Home Department. So naturally what you would do is you'd download this. Now this is where the journey really begins in terms of leveraging the advantages you can get from legal tech. Most people may print this. It's a small size or medium sized case with all the facts and the relevant themes concurrently running throughout. Now, you could print it and then file it, get the highlighters and the post-it notes out and sort of scan through it, getting the information you want. The result of that would be having thousands and thousands of pages of documents, a overworked printer, and a working space that isn't particularly appealing. You need a large desk, having to go through loads and loads of paper. It's not the sort of thing you'd want to do. Another thing you could do is download it and store it in a folder where all of your other like-minded cases or legislation and research would go, and then you can navigate through them in the way you want. Again, it's not a terrible suggestion, but there is one which is far, far better. Download it as a PDF or a Word document. Wait for it to download. And now what you get is drag, drop into Casedo. This in front of me is Casedo. It's a very intuitive software that was designed by a barrister for barristers, but I found, and a lot of students find, that it's got wider use and application for research and collating documents. Now, this is the document we just downloaded. Right here. It's a 3-page case summary. You can get obviously larger documents. For instance, already here I've got Alan Khan and Abdul, which is tens and tens of pages long, as you can see. Now, the trick in understanding Casedo and understanding the tools out there for your advantage is this. You bring it in, allow it to download. Here we are. Now, simply, that's the case we're dealing with. We start reading it, and the specific points that are of use and are of interest to me, you highlight, bookmark, and annotate using text box. We can look through, read, and find more relevant things within this. Of course, I've picked this out at random, but you would be a bit more specific with your research. Here we'll bookmark it as no principal basis for costs. Bring in the text box. And record my thoughts as I have them. So here I could write in a LASPO's impact on immigration matters within court costs bear in mind. Now, you do this all throughout your research, and then what you end up with ultimately is something looking a bit more like this. Here, we've got the post-implementation review of the Legal Aid Sentencing Punishment of Offenders Act, and all of the bookmarks I had made throughout my time researching and reading it. So for instance, if we were to go and navigate quickly through to, say, criminal legal aid reforms, within here, you've got exactly what you need here. You can highlight again what you need and return to them at lightning speed. What this ultimately allows you to do is, more than anything, save time. Obviously, the paper-based system allows you to do the same thing whilst relying on stationary equipments like Post-it notes and highlighters in the same function. But the only difference is you're spending an awful lot more time that you don't need to be doing, and you're using a lot more space that you don't need to be. With this, you can use a software that is locally stored, so you don't even need connectivity with the internet to use it or navigate through it. You can use it anywhere, anytime. And you can return to your thoughts and continue developing your ideas regarding the wider topic and research topic that you had. Now, to give perhaps another example, we could look through here. Let's find something particularly important. Family legal help. Right. Already, we know that these two sections I've already highlighted are relevant, and we know quickly that it relates to family legal help has increased compared to other areas. Fine. So now we can continue writing and drafting in respect of the information we've already isolated. And what this does is it allows us to refine the search strategy as necessary. We can flick through and navigate through important pieces of information that relates to the overall project at any time we want, and we can revisit them and pick up where we left off efficiently. Essentially, through utilizing legal tech like this, as supplemented by stuff like Westlaw, what we're able to do more than anything is reevaluate the concept, the research topic you have in mind, based on the nature and the extent of the information available and the parameters of the research project itself. So if we specifically investigate legal aid within the confines of criminal law or family law, and we find that there isn't enough information to base it on to sort of translate onto a 10,000 word dissertation or master's thesis, then what we simply do is we start looking into other areas or other scopes. Civil representation may be a preferable aspect to investigate. What this allows us to do is to really work through our research quickly and understand what's lacking, the weaknesses in terms of our arguments, so that we can revitalize them and get stronger ones, strengthening them with better research that we can go to quickly. Now, by synthesizing, analyzing, and integrating information and sources, we can also allow this to supplement our own knowledge. As I said before, researching is a process, and as you learn more and more things within the research you're doing, you're then able to strengthen the angle you've got and sort of investigate more things. So if we find that disability discrimination is particularly significant within cuts on legal aid, then what we can do is we can simply go back to Westlaw and search for specific cases and legislation as applied to disability. And then what this allows us to do is refine our search and take on a brand new angle that we've investigated and found to be relevant. So we can look for disability now. Apply it. And start reading through several cases that relate to discrimination. Bring them back into Casedo and start working from there. And at the end, this whole entire bundle that I've drafted just for this demonstration is over 600 pages. Some masters will be thousands. You can already see the difference between having a single digital tool that allows you to work through several important concepts, important commentary, important research in one space with one common purpose. Now, by using information, as we can investigate and work through here, we can identify necessary angles for specific purposes. We do that simply by using a search function, as you could have in other tools, or just by Control F. So for instance, here, if we were to go on the Crown Court search, it will identify everything that's relevant to Crown Court throughout the research that you've already done. And it will ultimately find the searches for Crown Court, where you can then navigate through and identify specific information relating to Crown Court that is helpful and useful towards the wider angle you're doing. So ultimately, the principal point is getting to grips with the right tools that are available. In my circumstance, Casedo and Westlaw were appropriate and have since been remained appropriate and have helped me get to grips with information quickly, so I can write and draft publications or research-heavy documents and abstracts as quickly as possible, and sort of be encouraged to do it as I don't have to go through the traditional avenues of printing and using printers or using really clunky and outdated methods of reading and investigating PDFs and documents. You can bring it all to one space and do it effectively from there. The next thing is planning ahead and breaking it down. Now, I've left this for the latter part of the presentation, because once you've equipped yourself with the right legal software and the legal tech and technology that can assist your project, and you're completely aware of what you can use and the concept you have in mind, it's important to then realize how significant the project is and how you can break it down to put it into manageable sections so that you can ultimately focus on specific pieces of work at a time. The way I dealt with this is I realized that I had just under 12 months to deal with my master's. I was obviously doing it with another course, the Bar Professional Training course, alongside a volunteering commitment, and later on entering the Casedo team and doing work there. So my schedule was quite packed, and it was quite easy to put off working on a master's on a 10,000 word dissertation week in, week out. And the way I dealt with dealing with such a massive responsibility was by planning ahead and breaking down the work into manageable sections. So I realized that there was two core themes that I wanted to investigate. I realized that I had to investigate the topic and the concept that I wanted to argue and advocate, and I needed to have enough time to review, redraft, and have it reviewed by the academic skills unit at my university. So I separated this into manageable sections months at a time. What this ultimately allowed me to do was remain honest with myself, because I couldn't progress into the next section unless I had completed enough satisfactory work on what I had in mind. And by doing this, I was also able to remain honest with my course supervisor, as I couldn't review work unless work was already completed. As such, by breaking it down, it was a lot easier to deal with huge chunks of work at a time. And this resulted in me being able to have enough time to properly and sufficiently review the work and get the best score that I could. Reconstructing your concept is also integral, and I've also left this for the latter part, simply to mention that when you are working on research-heavy projects like this and you're reading countless pages of journals and commentary, you will find throughout that time that there are new angles and new concepts that are sort of born out of the investigation and the research you're completing. This does not necessarily mean that your original concept needs to be abandoned or that it was wrong. Simply that reconstructing it as you go along is something that you should be looking to do if necessary. And it's something that you will inevitably be doing, especially when you've got all of your research in one space and you're able to read through it and link it where necessary. So for instance, if I've got something of value here, I could highlight it, link it, go to the other section of something else that's relevant, say here, link it to this, and then later on find, by using the link functions and by being able to navigate through them, that there are specific parts of that research that brings on a new angle that I hadn't even explored before. So for instance, as I mentioned earlier, in my master's dissertation, I was focusing on the rights of the vulnerable in times of crisis. I wasn't focusing on the access to justice they had via law clinics and what that meant for me as an initial assessor at Toynbee Hall. Later on, as I started doing the research, I started realizing the valuable information that came out of that. So I started reconstructing my thesis and my concept to accommodate this new investigatory side of the work I had been achieving. And as such, the ultimate work was able to be a lot more coherent and up to date. So it's important to remember that you can reconstruct a concept at any given time in light of the research you are discovering and isolating. And this allows you to bring about the ability to continually bring in valuable information without the need of sticking to your original concept, as you can reconstruct that at any given time. Bringing in new research and valuable pieces of commentary. So with that said, we can now move on to the Q&A section. If any of you have questions on this, on Casedo, or on specifically how I used Casedo and other legal tech to my advantage as a student.
Hello. So maybe let's see if anyone has any questions, and if not, then I have some questions that I can also ask myself about what you've been talking about. I've seen someone on YouTube ask the question, can you edit documents in this software as well? Is that something you can?
You can't edit the document itself. What you can do is, if there's a specific point, for instance, here, that you want to bring together, bring it out, and sort of work it to your advantage, you can simply highlight it so you don't forget about it, specifically state what it is you want to do with that piece of information here. Then, if you're using Q screens as I do, copy and paste it. You can copy and paste it into the text doc if you really wanted. Work through it here, and then bring it back to, if it's a Microsoft Word document that you're using, or whatever your drafting or editing tool is, and then get something like this. But to edit it from within Casedo, you can't. No, it's not designed for that. It's designed to assist and supplement the drafting procedure rather than work within it.
Great, thank you for your answer. Someone else has asked here below, I'll put it on screen. Have you used these strategies and approaches in a professional capacity after you graduated?
I have. I think I've mentioned this briefly within the earlier slides. I used Casedo to supplement the research stage and to be able to bring everything together in masters. But beyond that, I found immediate use for it. As a county court advocate, I was able to use it as a bundling software in the courts. It's originally designed for that purpose, so I was able to sort of go back to that immediately. But in terms of its wider applications and implications that you can take advantage of as a writer for various different places like Legal Futures or the Insight Hub, I'm continually using research to sort of advocate and react to relevant topics within the legal sector. So I'm continually using Casedo in that capacity. Of course, these new tasks aren't as lengthy. It's not 10,000 word project, but all the same, it still requires a understanding of Casedo and Westlaw to bring it together.
I see. And there's another question down below. I guess I'll just have to hold my curiosity to the end. So Bezzy wants to know, Casedo is very impressive. Was it designed with students in mind or just for lawyers?
As far as I understand, it was designed primarily for lawyers by a tax barrister, Ross Birkbeck, who's also the CEO of Casedo. He designed it to assist lawyers work paperlessly and sort of change their practice. But later on, it started becoming more and more clear that it's relevant for law students. And since then, we've been able to use the software as a platform for mooting. The UCL junior mooting competition used it. We hosted our own mooting competition. And with that, through the student engagement in that, it became more and more clear that it's actually relevant for a wide range of topics. A lot of journalist students have been using it for their research purposes, and obviously for dissertation, which is quite wide in practice.
Great, thank you for your answer. We have another question here. Someone who is wondering, can the software be used in different jurisdictions, or is it only suitable for England and Wales?
No, it can be used widely. It's actually used internationally. We've got legal professionals using it across borders. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, the JMC finalist was using it in India at the time. Obviously, it depends on the sort of purpose you're using it for. If you're bringing in documents so that you can bundle them and take them to court, it will be the same self-explanatory practicality across any court. But ultimately, it's quite wide in its range.
Perfect. Thank you. And of course, you all feel free to ask any more questions. Just type them right into the chat when and if you have them. In the meantime, I'll ask, because a lot of the resources you were mentioning and talking about are quite law specific. And so for the people who might be in economics and they know that they're going to be having to write a dissertation or master's thesis, do you think it's still going to be useful for them, even if they can use those specific resources that you mentioned?
Repeat the question again, because it just started cutting off a little bit. Within economics, you said?
Yeah, for instance, if we have students who study economics and they might need to write their dissertation or their thesis, a lot of the examples you were using are for resources that have legal cases. But knowing that, for instance, UCL has subscriptions to a host of other types of platforms with other types of documentation, do you think this is something that even someone studying a different subject can use?
Certainly. The principle essentially is this: if the subject matter concerns documents, whether they're PDFs or Microsoft Word, then it's useful. So as an economics student, if you're using mountains and mountains of papers relating to trajectories or specific things that have to do with economics, if they concern PDFs or documents, then the same principles apply. You simply bring them in and work through it using the software. So although it is, as you mentioned, as I've advocated it, quite law specific, that's because I used it within a legal capacity, but its applicability is quite range. If you're using, say you've got a 50-page PDF document on specific research and statistics relating to your field, if you want to bring those pages into one accessible platform and navigate through them, Casedo helps.
Okay, perfect. Well, I hopefully the people who are listening to this who are studying law are still, assuaged that their thesis is still saved. They can still. We've got another question from someone who has asked, can we export our work to paper to also include the comments and highlights?
Yes, you can. One of the clever things about this latest version of Casedo, version 1.5, is that you can import the files, and this allows you to ultimately import them with the highlights and such. You can bring it together. You can also generate a table of contents, which is also helpful. But ultimately, yes, you can. You can export documents, and this allows you to export them all bookmarks and all the annotations. You can also export them with double-sided printing, and you can also bring in PDFs that are already bookmarked. As a matter of fact, this specific piece here, Legal Aid Statistics, I imported with bookmarks itself. So if you find a particular PDF that's already bookmarked and annotated, you don't lose those. If you bring them into Casedo, you can bring them with the annotations as it comes.
Perfect. Thank you. Hopefully that helps. And I'm sure people are wondering, is it still, you received a lot of support from your supervisor and from your university. For people who are worried that now they're not going to be able to communicate their ideas, or maybe they're not going to be able to explain what they've been researching to their supervisor, they can't really interact with them in real life. Do you think this is potentially helpful in that way? Do you have any words of advice for students who are worried that they won't be supported enough?
Well, the one thing that would definitely help, because I remember when I was doing my research, I didn't really stay in contact with my course supervisor week in, week out. It was more intervals, so specific months we would catch up. The one thing that this helped to answer that question is any question that I had or any specific thing that I was finding challenging, I was able to record within the Casedo bundle and within the specific topic. So for instance, if it was relating to legal aid statistics, or this was a particular area that I was finding challenging, I could actually record those thoughts specific to the area that I was struggling to understand. And the result of this was that I could go to university with the opportunities I had with the bundle and with the specific questions ready and to navigate through them. Obviously, right now, things have changed a bit in that access to course supervisors is restricted largely. But the one thing that you can definitely do is record all of your thoughts, whether they are exciting ideas or whether they are apprehensions that you have, and bring them together and get in touch using other software, Zoom or perhaps Zoho One, things that you can now use to get in contact with course supervisors and rely on the digital platform you had.
Perfect. Thank you. So hopefully, students who are worried can feel a little bit better. I know I've known people who were having to complete their thesis just recently over the summer now, and they were so worried because they were just not getting the contact hours they wanted with their supervisor. But hopefully this is a way that you can still present your coherent thinking and research to your supervisor and still get feedback on the direction, even if it's not the content just yet of your paper.
Exactly.
So amazing. Does anyone have any questions? Feel free to put any of them in the chat for now. I don't see any new ones. Is there any final comments or any advice that you would like to give to students who are writing their things right now and are considering getting Casedo or are considering exploring more tech options and innovations when it comes to writing their papers rather than just the traditional methods?
Yeah, right now, one of the exciting things is that a lot of people are working in the same way, in that everyone's working virtually, everyone's working from home, everyone's working remotely. The one thing that I would have liked to have done in this circumstance, if I was a student, is share my Casedo bundles. If I've worked on, tirelessly on hours and hours and hours to produce this, and I'm, collaborating with another student who's done the same thing, if we both have the software and we've both done this, we can both share this with each other. So say you've spent, weeks and weeks investigating a particular subject and you've outsourced another responsibility to appear, and you've both spent all that time doing this, traditionally you would have spent it using paper. I remember back during the first few years of undergraduate, if I wanted notes, I'd literally get notes in paper, or I'd get them emailed to me, but I wouldn't actually understand the trace of thought that peer had. But now, if you use Casedo and you share Casedo, you can identify exactly what that person was thinking, where you want that person for you to go, the bookmarks you want them to use, the links you want to use. You can even just go to the table of contents and get a really good broad overview of exactly what they've achieved and what you can leverage. Right now, I think you can get Casedo, students can get Casedo for the price of a cup of coffee. So it would be a shame not to, and not to collaborate using it.
It is absolutely worth it. And for anyone who wants to know more about Casedo, where can they go to find out about that?
You can just go onto the website, which is Casedo, www.casedo.com. The website serves more than just a place to get the software. Obviously, you can get it as a legal professional. You can get a 10-day trial. If you're participating in the UCL mooting competition, you can get a license to use for the moot. But beyond that, you can also use the Insight Hub to get insight into the legal tech sphere. So things like legal tech on the rise, legal tech within Europe, cybersecurity threats, anything that's sort of on the space of legal tech. And this does get updated week in, week out with new and improved information regarding the latest legal tech news. You can also go through news and events and sort of find out exactly what we've been up to. The latest update is the UCL mooting competition where Aishwarya won, and you can sort of see our journey as well. And one of the benefits of Casedo is that you get continuous training. So if you download Casedo and you use Casedo, you're also able to receive training and support from actual legal professionals, not necessarily just support from people who don't actually know much about the legal tech landscape, but rather thought leaders on the subject, people like Ross Birkbeck, people like Jim Hitch, Tom Hagee, different esteemed practitioners in different sectors who would really be able to use, give you their knowledge and understanding of how they use Casedo. You can get a demo from a tax barrister today if you wanted.
I actually have done one. It was kind of crazy when I realized that was actually the CEO who was showing me how to use the software. I was like, oh my God, that's actually him. So yeah, do take advantage of that opportunity. If you are in the midst of writing a piece of academic writing and you feel like maybe paper isn't working for you, or for whatever reason, you just need a change up or you need to improve your processes, then it's definitely worth even just taking a look at Casedo and trying it and seeing. And like you said, for £2.49, that's basically the price of a cup of coffee. So it's definitely worth checking out just to see if it helps you. And if it does, then there you go. That's great.
Exactly.
Amazing. Someone has asked, is legal technology versatile in terms of which areas of law it can help you in, or is it just the commercial side?
A lot of people have this misunderstanding that because technology is such a commercially related field, that it's going to be more relevant towards, high-end solicitors and people dealing with big commercial matters. It's not necessarily the case. I know many legal professionals who use Casedo in a wide practicalities. Employment law, we've got family practitioners who use it. It's quite relevant towards a broader spectrum of law, and even criminal law. As a legal advisor at the Ministry of Justice, I'm dealing with the criminal procedure every single day, and it helps bring in the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service's initial papers into one space, so I can really get to grips and get a flavor of what the matter is. It's not got a particular advantage for a particular sector. Its features are actually relevant to all. So for instance, the latest with the new pagination, you can recognize text, paginate normally or not paginate. And the reason why they've included that is because the feedback received from family lawyers was such that their papers, when they receive it, they're paginated in a different sort of way. and such, they would have to have the ability to not paginate certain sections. And so that feature came out specifically in response to family practitioners, and that's not really a commercial side. So one of the things about Casedo is it's quite responsive to its try lists. If you have a specific feature that you want or a specific aspect of the software you want improved, it's quite easy to get that done.
Great. Hopefully that was helpful for whoever asked the question. Now, unless we have any other questions, I think I'll let you. Great. Okay, that person said that it was really helpful. Thank you so much. So hopefully that gives you warm fuzzies. So I think we're kind of coming up on the end now here. So if you'd like to give some final words, any concluding thoughts?
Yeah. Right now, if you're in the legal field or perhaps the wider professional sectors, you'll find that technology is more than ever experiencing attention. The reason obviously is in light of the pandemic, in light of everyone working from home, everyone working remotely, there's a greater number of investments in legal tech, in technology, and in a variety of different technical tools, ranging from video conferencing software to bundling documents and all sorts of things. I'm really, really adamant, and I'm convinced that post-pandemic, these changes are going to stick. You're going to see a new understanding of how technology is used. Previously, a lot of sectors, including the legal sector, have been quite resistant to technology. I think that's going to change now. I think a lot of practitioners are going to understand the wider practicalities of technology and invest more and more into them. And the lawyers of tomorrow are going to have advantages of using tools that their predecessors didn't. And journalists of tomorrow or economic accountants of tomorrow, anyone in any sector, they're going to be utilizing technology more and more because of this newfound recognition of technology. So as a student, you are technically the future generation of these professionals. So the quicker you can get to grips with available technology now and just the wider tech landscape, the better it will be for your chances of not only employability, but also proficiency. If you can bring with you the ability to operate complex and sophisticated technology, then you're going to be an asset to whatever company you're working with or whatever firm you're working with, because those places are going to more likely than not be investing in technology and be expecting their employees to understand and use those techs. I understand that right now a variety of firms like Allen & Overy are investing millions and millions in tech incubators, and that means that the future solicitors will have to be able to have the proficiency of operating technology. So it's an exciting time to get involved with technology, and I'd encourage all students to really get to grips and get a flavor of these tools out there so that they can utilize them beyond university and as postgraduates entering the working market.
And on that note, thank you so much, Milad. We're really pleased to have had you, and then hopefully we'll be able to see more of you during the year, as I'm sure people's academic workloads are not going to be getting any lighter as the academic calendar moves on. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Great. So that was Milad, everyone, from Casedo. Hopefully, if you guys found that interesting and relevant, then you'll check out Casedo. As you can see, it's a really cool and interesting software, and it can be really useful for people in a variety of fields of study, or who are, just generally in need of a software to make their life easier when they're going through many, many documents. So I hope everyone learned something, found something interesting. If you guys want to hear more about Casedo, then obviously let us know. And we'll see you in our next events. Do check out our social media page and find out more about the events that we run, as well as our sponsors and partner companies. And I hope everyone has a lovely and fantastic evening.